It started with the quiet. Ben had never noticed how loud the house usually was until it wasn't. When his wife and daughter left to visit her parents for the weekend, the silence clung to the walls like fog. He told himself he was looking forward to the break. Time to himself. He even laughed about it at work. I've got the house all to myself. Gonna binge horror movies and eat like a teenager. But by the second night, something about the stillness began to gnaw at him. He was sitting in the living room with the TV off, scrolling mindlessly through his phone, the hum of the fridge the only sound in the house. It was late, 11:42 p.m. He could see the exact time because he'd just checked his phone again. Not for notifications, just to see something move. Then there was the creak from upstairs. Just one. He froze, thumb hovering over the screen. It could have been anything. Old houses made noise, right? Expansion, settling, wind. But the air was still, no wind tonight, and that creak hadn't sounded like wood shifting. It had rhythm. A step. Ben waited, barely breathing. Nothing. He forced a laugh and shook his head. Jesus, man, pull it together. He stood, stretched, and decided it was time to lock up and call it a night. The hallway light flickered as he passed it. Not fully out. Just a stutter, like it was struggling to stay awake too. He glanced up, then flicked the switch off and on. The bulb came back strong. Good enough. Upstairs, the hallway was dim. They always left the light outside his daughter's room on at night. Ben hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, unsure why he suddenly didn't want to go up. The thought struck him, if he heard another noise right now, he'd leave. Just walk out. Get in the car and go. But he didn't. Nothing came. Just silence. Still, every step on the staircase sounded too loud. The creaking under his feet echoed. He tried to step lightly, not wanting to disturb. What? The house? Himself? At the top, he glanced into his daughter's room. Neat as ever. Toys in the right places, the nightlight glowing softly by her bed. He smiled. That helped. Then he turned toward the master bedroom. The door was half closed. He didn't remember leaving it that way. In fact, he could have sworn he shut it. Not fully, but more than that. He pushed it open slowly. Nothing. Just the usual mess, his clothes on the chair, the unmade bed, the soft glow from the bathroom light he'd left on as a habit. He undressed quickly, trying not to let his imagination spiral. Then he slid into bed, pulled the covers up, and told himself to sleep. It took longer than he expected. At 3:17 a.m., Ben woke suddenly. The sound that pulled him out of sleep wasn't loud. It was subtle, soft, but it was unmistakable. Breathing. Not his. Not from the bed. It was coming from the hallway. Long, slow breaths, like someone standing just outside the door. Ben's body stiffened, heart hammering. He strained his ears, barely daring to breathe himself. Another breath. Shaky. Inhale. Exhale. And then the faintest sound, like a fingernail brushing the doorframe. He sat up slowly, not making a sound. Reached for the bedside lamp. It didn't turn on. He clicked it again. Nothing. He grabbed his phone. Screen dead. Impossible. It was at 80% when he went to bed. He tried restarting. Nothing. The hallway light flickered again, the same one from earlier. Then darkness swallowed it. Ben's mouth went dry. He got out of bed as quietly as possible, inching toward the door. His hand reached for the knob. He pressed his ear to the wood. Silence! He waited. Still nothing. With a breath held so tightly it hurt, he opened the door. Empty hallway. Dark. But down at the far end, something was different. His daughter's door was open. The nightlight off. A cold wave ran through him. She wasn't even home. He took a cautious step forward. Then another. The carpet muffled his footfalls. He walked slowly, deliberately. Each inch toward that room stretched the air tighter around him. He reached the doorway and stopped. The room was dark. Shapes within it, vague outlines, the dollhouse, the rocking chair, the dresser. Then the chair moved. Just an inch. Just a shift of weight, as if someone had leaned forward slightly. Ben couldn't see who or what was in it, but he knew something was there. He didn't speak, didn't move. His breath trembled in his throat. Then the softest whisper, "Where's Emily?" The voice was dry, paper thin, genderless. Ben didn't answer. He backed away, slow as he could. But the whisper came again. "Where's Emily?" The figure stood. He ran. Down the hall. Down the stairs. Not looking back. He burst out the front door into the night air, barefoot, shirtless, heart thundering. He got in the car, locked the doors, and sat there for hours, headlights on the house, until the sun began to rise. When he finally went back inside, the bedroom light worked. His phone was on the charger, 92%. Everything seemed normal, but the dollhouse in Emily's room was open. And sitting in the tiny rocking chair inside it was a slip of paper, folded neatly. Ben opened it. One word. Home. Tea started with the sound of a clock that didn't exist. Raj had just moved into a new apartment, an older building tucked away behind the city's livelier streets. The rent was cheap, the ceilings were high, and the windows were wide. It was the kind of place you convince yourself has character, even if the plumbing groans like it's in pain and the hallway smells faintly of mildew and something metallic. He was a freelance writer, mostly horror fiction, and had long romanticized the idea of writing in an old, creaky apartment, isolated from the bustle. But the romance began to fade 2 weeks in. It was the ticking. At first, he assumed it was his kitchen clock. It ticked like any other, soft and rhythmic. But one night, he noticed something strange. He was lying in bed, eyes closed, when the ticking grew louder, sharper, almost mechanical, like the gears of a pocket watch pressed to his ear. When he opened his eyes, the room was dim, lit only by the street lamp outside. His digital clock on the nightstand blinked silently. No ticking. Still, the sound persisted, clear as footsteps. Tick, tick, tick. He got up, walked through the apartment, checked every corner. The kitchen clock had stopped. Its battery had died. Yet the ticking grew louder. He stood in the center of the living room, listening. It came from the wall. No, inside the wall. Tick, tick. That night, he barely slept. And from then on, the sound became part of his life. It followed him from room to room. At first, it only came at night. Then, it bled into the afternoons, soft and patient, like something waiting. He told himself it was the pipes, or maybe a neighbor's strange habit. But his neighbors were hardly ever around. The apartment beside his was empty, had been since he moved in, and the one above him, an elderly woman who rarely left her unit. One evening, as he was finishing a draft, the ticking stopped, abruptly, as if someone had turned off a metronome mid-beat. Silence! He stared at the ceiling, waiting, but the quiet held, a breathless, unnatural stillness that stretched for minutes. He almost laughed at how relieved he felt, until the knock came. 3 soft raps, from the inside of the wall. He froze. It came again, slower, more deliberate. Raj stood, heart pounding, and pressed his ear to the drywall. The air was cold there, and behind it, he heard a faint shuffle, like bare feet dragging across wood. He backed away. He didn't sleep that night. He left every light on, sat in the corner of the room, trying not to imagine what could possibly be moving inside the walls. By morning, it was gone. No ticking, no shuffling, nothing. He went to his landlord, a man named Irfan who ran a small electronics repair shop downstairs. There's something in the walls, Raj said. Irfan raised an eyebrow. Like rats? No, bigger. I don't know, but it knocks. And there's this ticking sound, like an old clock. Irfan rubbed his chin. You're in 3B, right? Raj nodded. That apartment's always been a little off. We had a guy before you. He moved out after a month. Said he kept hearing things. Before that, an older woman. She was quiet. Died in her sleep. Raj blinked. Did she live alone? Irfan paused. As far as I know. That night, the ticking returned. But different now. It didn't come from the wall. It came from his closet. It started softly, like a whisper. Then louder, faster. Urgent. Tick, 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 tick. He grabbed a flashlight and opened the door. Empty. He stepped inside. The ticking stopped. And then the bulb in the closet flickered and died. He stood in the dark, breath held, heart slamming. Behind him, the door creaked. He turned just in time to see it shut. He lunged, yanked it open, and found his bedroom empty, lights still on, everything unchanged. He should have left then. Should have packed his bags and found some hotel or couch to crash on. But something made him stay. A sick curiosity, maybe. A writer's need to understand the story. The next evening, he bought a cheap stethoscope from a pharmacy. He pressed it against the living room wall. Tick, tick. He moved to the bedroom wall. Louder. To the closet wall, even louder. He closed his eyes, steadying his breath. Then he heard something else. A whisper, faint, layered beneath the ticking. Not words. More like humming. A melody. Off-key. Childlike. He dropped the stethoscope. For the first time, he seriously considered calling someone. A priest. An exorcist. A demolition crew. Instead, he pulled out a hammer. He began to chip away at the drywall behind the closet. With every hit, the ticking seemed to grow more frenzied. Angry, he pulled out chunks of plaster, revealing wooden studs, old insulation. And behind that, something strange. A small, rectangular opening. A crawl space. His flashlight barely reached the back. Dust danced in the beam. Cobwebs clung to the corners. And at the far end, something shiny. He crawled in. The air was dry and tight, filled with the smell of old wood and something else, sour, metallic. He reached the back and found it. A brass pocket watch. Its cover was etched with ornate symbols, the glass cracked. But it was ticking. Loud and furious. He picked it up, and everything stopped. The sound, the air, even his own breath caught in his chest, frozen. Then, behind him, a voice. You weren't supposed to find it. He turned. A woman stood at the crawl space entrance. Pale, eyes sunken. Her nightgown fluttered as if caught in wind, though the air was still. He scrambled backward, but she didn't move closer. She only watched. Then whispered, It keeps time for the forgotten. Now you've heard it. He tried to speak, to ask what that meant, but his tongue felt heavy, his limbs cold. When he woke, he was lying on the floor of his bedroom. The crawl space was gone. The wall completely intact. The pocket watch sat on his chest, still ticking. He moved out that day, left everything behind. But the ticking followed. In hotel rooms, at friends' houses, even in the silence of rural train rides. No one else heard it. Only him. It kept time for him now. And every night, it ticked a little faster. It started with a storm. Not the kind you could track on a weather app. This one came from nowhere. No warning. No flicker of thunderclouds. Just a sudden howl of wind against the windows, rattling the glass like desperate fingers begging to be let in. Rena had never liked being alone in the house, especially not at night. But this was her aunt's place, deep in the country, miles from anything resembling a neighborhood. and she had agreed to house sit for the weekend. It seemed simple enough. Feed the cats, water the plants, lock up before bed. But something had changed after sunset. The air had taken on a kind of charge, like the house itself was holding its breath. She first noticed it while brushing her teeth. A low creak from the hallway behind her. She froze, foam on her lips, and turned toward the sound. Nothing. Just the soft hum of the old refrigerator from the kitchen and the wind outside. She laughed it off, spat into the sink, and rinsed. The power cut out 5 minutes later. Not a slow flicker. A total blackout. Even the hum died, just blackness. The kind that swallows everything. Rena stood in the bathroom doorway, staring down the pitch-dark hall. Her phone was charging in the living room, far from reach. Her pulse quickened. She wasn't afraid of the dark, but this was something else. This felt deliberate. She whispered, "Okay, it's just the storm, circuit breaker." But something about that silence felt thick, intentional. She reached out along the wall, fingers brushing the wallpaper, guiding her steps toward the living room. Every board in the floor creaked. Every breath felt too loud. And then she heard it, soft padding. Footsteps. Behind her. She spun. Nothing. Then a whisper. Her name. Rena. It wasn't her aunt's voice. It wasn't a voice she knew at all. It was hoarse, ragged, like it hadn't been used in years. She backed into the living room, hand darting for her phone. She clicked the screen on. The light hit her eyes like a flare. No signal. Another creak, this time to her left. She swept the phone's flashlight across the room. Empty. The two cats, Smudge and Leo, sat rigid on the back of the couch, fur bristled, eyes locked on the hallway she'd just come from. Then Leo hissed. Low warning. Rena had never heard him hiss before. She turned the flashlight back toward the hall. Just walls. Carpet. A framed photo of her aunt and uncle smiling at the beach. And then, just for a second, the shape of someone standing at the end. Pale, still. A silhouette too thin, too tall. She dropped the phone. The cats bolted, scrambling up the stairs. She didn't move. The shape was gone. Rena scooped up the phone, hands shaking. Light back on. The hallway was empty. She locked the front door. Every window. She checked them twice. She even thought of calling the police, but no power, no service. She reminded herself it could have been her mind playing tricks. Stress, a shadow, a reflection. But deep down, she knew that wasn't it. She decided to sleep upstairs in the guest room where the cats had gone. At least she wouldn't be alone. The room was cold. The windows rattled. The storm was still going strong, bending trees outside like matchsticks. She found the cats curled up under the bed, wide-eyed, trembling. She crawled under the blankets, fully clothed, and left the flashlight on beside her. Somehow, she drifted off. She woke to breathing. Not her own, not the cat's. Heavy, wet, labored. Right above her. Her eyes opened to complete darkness. The flashlight was off. The breathing stopped. She didn't dare move. Something was on the ceiling. She couldn't see it, couldn't hear it anymore, but the feeling in her bones screamed it was there. The mattress dipped slightly, as though someone had knelt at the foot of the bed. Then something touched her foot. She screamed, kicked, grabbed the flashlight and turned it on. Nothing. The room was empty. The door was closed. The cats were gone. She sprinted downstairs, flashlight jerking with every step. She had one goal now: get out, find a car, run to the road, anything. The front door wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't budge. She beat on the glass until her fists hurt, screamed into the wind. No one came. Then she heard the humming, a soft lullaby coming from the kitchen. She turned slowly. The kitchen light was on, the only one in the house, and standing at the stove, was her aunt, back turned, humming, stirring something. Rena choked on a breath. Aunt Mel? The woman didn't turn. Rena stepped closer. The power's out. How? How are you here? Still, she didn't respond, just stirred. Rena reached out a hand, just enough to tap her shoulder. Her aunt turned. It wasn't her. The thing wearing her aunt's skin grinned wide, too wide. The eyes were wrong. Black, hollow, empty. Rena stumbled back. The thing stepped forward. You should have stayed upstairs, it rasped. Rena ran. Upstairs. Down the hall. Into the attic. She slammed the door shut and pushed a trunk against it. She crouched in the corner, flashlight held like a weapon. The door never opened. The storm never stopped. They found her 2 days later, catatonic, curled in a ball in the attic. She couldn't speak, could barely blink. She just kept whispering one thing over and over. Don't touch the stove. Don't touch the stove.